The new amphitheater is done, Onondaga Lake is cleaner, and property taxes may be headed lower. Too good to be true? We'll find out. But first, welcome to this edition of Central here on Fox 68. I'm Daniel Pluff. Glad to be back with you, and tonight we are talking some local issues, central if you will, Onondaga County in particular. Who better than to address those issues than our own county executive, Joanie Mahoney, joins us live in studio. And I must say thank you very much for joining us today. Every time I've had you in studio, it seems like there's always some topics to talk about. A little more this time. We're going to try to cram it into 30 minutes, but I'm very happy to have you here. May I call you for the purposes just of the interview, Joanie? Is that okay?
Of course.
No disrespect. Yes. It's just
No.
easier for me than if that's all right with you.
Of course, yes, and I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate the invitation.
Our pleasure. As I'm kind of joking but serious, you know, most of the headlines here are pretty positive right now. And we'll talk about some things that maybe need some work, of course, to say the least. Your budget's out. I want to get to that, but it occurs to me that what we've seen so much of in the news lately, lots of press about apparently some new structure being built along the shoreline of Onondaga Lake.
Did you hear about it?
I did. The amphitheater.
Yes.
Has your fingerprints all over it. It seems to be now completed, done. Are you satisfied?
I think it's fantastic. I don't know if you have had the opportunity.
I knew you'd ask, and I haven't.
Sorry about that. Well, we had the opening show with Miranda Lambert, but
Right.
then we also had an open house, and thousands of people came out on Sunday afternoon to enjoy what is a brand new park in our Onondaga County park system. This amphitheater, I think, is great because it's a quality of life enhancer. You know, you probably see, like everyone else, that when the tours are announced, all the national acts in the spring, that they're nearby,
Right.
but they never come to Syracuse because we don't have the venue like they do at SPAC or Darien Lake. But
Will
in
this
addition,
change that? This will change that
oh,
in your
this
view?
this is already changing that.
I'm not positive. I'm sure you'll correct me, but about $50 million to construct it?
Yes, and you might be interested to know how we got to that number. The state settled with the Oneidas at the Turning Stone, and that results in about a $2.5 million payment to Onondaga County from the Turning Stone, new revenue. We know that that will service about a $50 million bond. So what we wanted to do was build something that wasn't going to add any burden to the taxpayers. And with $50 million, we went out and we built this amphitheater and this new park.
Forgive the directness of this question, but we hear a lot of projects that are built, great projections for revenue, et cetera, and they don't always meet the expectations. Are you pretty confident you can generate enough to, as you say, pay off the debt on this?
Well, yes, and when I talk about the revenue, Onondaga County has changed the way it funds its operation in a large part. Like, we used to rely more heavily on property tax. People don't want the property tax burden, and we have gradually knocked that down, as you said in the opening. And as a result, we rely more heavily on sales tax, which is nice because things like this amphitheater generate the revenue that we're going to use to fill the potholes. So it answers the question, why would you build an amphitheater when you have potholes? This is the revenue that we're going to use. But when I talk about what this is going to do, I'm talking about more broadly than county operations. We project a $20 million spend by the thousands of people that are going to come 20 times a year, and they'll be shopping in our stores and eating in the
Is
restaurants.
that a reliable projection, you think?
Oh, yes, and those numbers, I mean, we went out and talked to consultants and we looked at what other operations do. So when I talk about what this is going to do, local business owners, those shops and restaurants in Solvay, Destiny USA, downtown Syracuse, the hotels, when people come to town for these concerts, that money is going to be recirculated through our economy.
Joanie, you would agree with this, that what Central New York doesn't need is one more negative voice, a naysayer. I don't want to be that person, right? But here's a question that's come up, and I think it's legitimate. I mean, you couldn't swing the proverbial dead cat by a tail and not hit another venue, so to speak, that's close by. I mean, you mentioned the Turning Stone, big draw for competitive acts, if you will, there. The Landmark Theater, the On Center, Onondaga Community College has a pretty good venue, if that's the right word. Others around. Does this market, does this community, can we support that many venues?
Well, this venue is different, and we did talk to the folks at the Turning Stone in the process of building this. We did not build a venue that's competing with anything they have, and it doesn't directly compete with any of those other venues. The one that comes up the most is the baseball stadium, because we did have Dave Matthews and Willie Nelson in 2009,
Which
I think.
you were a supporter of, as
Yes,
I recall.
big supporter
Yes.
of, and we have tried to do more of that there. But when the community put the natural grass into that facility, it requires staging that's very expensive. Those costs are passed on to promoters, and they take a lot of the profit out. Promoters haven't wanted to book acts at the baseball stadium because of that added expense.
One more question on that, on the somewhat negative side. Other people have been a little critical, saying, and you just alluded to it, that maybe county government shouldn't be involved with a project like this, that it should be a private institution or private entity. What do you say to that?
Well, this is a brand new county park, and it's the same as the zoo or Onondaga Lake Park, where millions of people come. This is a great addition to our county park system. And the way we have done this is we've rented the facility. We rented the amphitheater to Live Nation, and they put on the Miranda Lambert show there. So we're not directly in the concert business, but we're making ourselves part of that world. In terms of the, I have teenagers. We were talking to other people with teenagers. These kids are going to Saratoga. They're going to Darien Lake. This quality of life that we're going to have with this amphitheater, and then that economic engine that's churning, is really good for us. So yes, I think Onondaga County should be making it possible for that to happen.
One more point on this, and talk about when you're wrong, and I'm talking about myself. Over the years, I had the pleasure, frankly, of interviewing former Congressman Jim Walsh. And one of the things that I would friendly argue with him about was Onondaga Lake. And he repeatedly over the years said, that lake is going to be usable again. He said, we don't need, as he said, we don't need to get it drinkable, like Skinny Atlas, for example. But that will be a recreational lake. And out of politeness, I just rolled my eyes and went on. That lake is unbelievably
swimmable,
better.
right?
Well, yeah,
I know. And if you come out to this new park, you'll see there was a perception that it was going to be the old Onondaga Lake with the smells and the look. It's not that anymore. It's blue water, and it's really a pleasure to be around.
That's
I've
a
been on
huge
boats
success
there.
story, don't you think?
And I think we owe a lot of credit to Jim Walsh. Jim Walsh had that tenacity to overcome the people who, like you just described, who just didn't see the value, and he brought millions of dollars to this community.
I liked him a lot, but he did bark at me about that, and I thought, okay, whatever, we'll move on. But it turns out he was right. Let's talk about money for a little bit. Let's talk about the budget, which is freshly released, right?
Yes.
Everyone's kind of going through it. If you were to save us the I guess the time and energy of going through page by page, what would
Which I was assuming you were going to do.
yeah. What would you say to me are the key components, the key highlights? What are you focused on there?
My message is that we are on firm financial footing in Onondaga County. We have gradually reduced the property tax levy, which is the total amount of property tax collected in Onondaga County. When I started, it was $180 million. We just put a budget in front of the legislature that's $140 million. We've reduced property taxes. We've done it very gradually, and at the same time, we've relied more heavily on sales tax. We're projecting very modest growth, 2% in 15, 1.5% next year. We do see, the economy is not robust yet, and we are budgeting.
I think you're being kind. I think you're being kind there. We'll talk about that.
And so we are budgeting with really conservative projections. We are continuing to modernize our government. We had a lot of silos where everybody had their own IT person and facilities person and HR person, and we now have created fiscal operations where we're dividing the work rather than by department, but by function. So one person can do it for multiple departments.
Let's talk about maybe what the accountants call the balance sheet. Money's coming in, money's going out. Where does most of the income come from? Is it property taxes?
No, it's sales tax.
Sales tax.
And that's what I think people are mistaken about. We use over $200 million in sales tax in this budget, and as I said, the property tax levy is $140 million. So it really answers that question. Onondaga County's infrastructure is in very good shape. We were in a position when the economy really tanked in 08, 09. This county had and continues to have the highest credit rating of any county in New York State. At that time, when interest rates plummeted, we were able to borrow money very inexpensively, and we put people to work, and we put roofs on buildings. We updated the Civic Center. We've done a lot of work, and our roads, our county roads are in good shape, and we have been able now to extend a hand. We've paved Adams Street, Harrison Street for the city of Syracuse. We've tried to help out in the suburbs and in the, but I would say that the biggest misconception is that we fund county government with property tax. We fund it with sales tax.
I would have thought that, frankly.
And that's why you do things like build an amphitheater so that sales tax money can stay here in our community.
Are you concerned, though, as county executive, are you concerned that some of your revenue from sales tax and other places will decline as our population is not growing?
Our population is flat. It's not decreasing, but it's flat. And what we have to do is create jobs. And I know that's a topic that I've talked about with you every time I've had the opportunity to talk to you. And we have, I just saw the most recent jobs numbers. We've added, about what was it? 50,000
on the jobs?
Yeah, well, I'm going year to year.
Okay.
I was just looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
But I know that the unemployment rate in Onondaga County is 4.7%, which is a little bit lower than the rest of the state. So we're on the right track. But in Onondaga County, our message has been this is a very stable place, and we are poised for that growth, and we have very steadily increased. I think it was 2,800 jobs I just read have been increased in the economy, and we're doing it in a very diverse way. There's not one giant employer that can up and leave like
we don't have that anymore.
Right,
yeah, I mean
right.
the Allieds are gone, the carriers have downsized, et cetera. Here's one thing that I do just want to pick on you about.
Okay.
Can at least I let you know it's coming.
Yes.
Right?
No, I'm bracing myself.
You're proposing a reduction in property taxes, and again, correct me, 4 cents per thousand.
Yeah,
I believe,
in the rate.
The rate, which is great, and you'll say, well, we're not keeping it flat. We're proposing a reduction in rate, and yet, I want to say to you, even if you cut property taxes significantly from these levels, we are still quite high when you look at other parts of the country.
Oh, absolutely. We are among the highest in the country, certainly. But it's not your county property tax bill. Your county property tax bill on a $100,000 house is $511. That is not where the property tax burden really is. The property tax burden, by and large, is coming from the schools. And they have their own issues and their own mandates to deal with. I know that one of the highlights in our budget is mandated costs from the state, which people hear about all the time, are actually down in this budget. They're down over $8.5 million because the state has absorbed the increased cost in Medicaid. That is a tremendous help to us. It's one of the reasons that you have the property tax bill that you have. We collect $140 million. We send $98 million to New York State just for Medicaid, and that's only one of our mandates. So those mandated costs have to come down to bend it further.
Here's maybe a personal question that I think about for you. They say politics is all about compromises and whatnot, and you have to deal with various ends of the ledge and all of that. If you could have just done a budget and said, this is it, this is what we're going with, how would it look any different from what it is right now? What would you have done differently? I mean, you've got to address a lot of other people's issues and concerns. I get it.
I think it's pretty similar on the local level. If I was to be able to do it not with any regard to the federal and state governments, it would be very different because, Medicaid is a federal program. They share half the cost with the states, and then the state passes its cost on to us. And we are one of only, I think, 2 states in the country that does it that way. I think that a policy should be that if you put a program in place, you have to put the funding behind it. If the federal government wants to offer a program, it needs to find out a way to pay for it without having to pass those costs on to the state who passes them on to the county. But on the local level, my budget looks like it can look. I have a good working relationship with the legislature right now. We communicate constantly. They knew what was coming. It's been very uneventful.
One minor detail in there, I thought I read something about, that I don't have, thank goodness, firsthand experience with the Justice Center, but I understand there's an overcrowding issue there.
Yes.
Previous sheriff, I think, wanted a new facility.
Yes.
Our new sheriff, Gene Conway, wants to look at this and study it. What's the latest on the Justice Center?
I'm very happy that the new sheriff has asked for an opportunity to look at alternatives to incarceration. You've heard, I'm sure, that when a lot of the state facilities closed, we ended up with a population that is, there are more people there with mental health issues. And warehousing folks with mental health issues in jail is not good on a personal level, human level. It's also not good from an economic standpoint. It's very expensive. And what we need to do is find alternatives to incarceration. And this new sheriff is putting a fresh set of eyes, and I fully support that.
Yeah, I got to get him on the program as well. Let's talk jobs and the economy for a little bit,
Yeah,
okay?
Okay.
You mentioned plant closures. For many years, it seems like every December or January, somebody was leaving, closing, and we haven't had that, really to speak of like we used to years ago. So maybe we've reached a level area, level playing field. I don't know what. But what do you see coming up? I mean, do you see companies expanding? Do you see something new coming in to change the overall economy and job environment here?
We have unbelievable high-tech manufacturing that goes on here with a lot of smaller businesses.
The tech center and all of that?
Well, and even beyond that. And we also have big companies like Infocon. I was out for a ribbon cutting at Infocon expanding, and the jobs growing in that sector has been very encouraging. We also have a very robust tourism sector here in central New York. People have discovered the Finger Lakes and our proximity to the Adirondacks, and you can go anywhere from here. And the gradual job growth has been encouraging. We are also on that throughway path with the Nano, and we are participating in that as well. What the SUNY Nano Scale School has done out in Buffalo, Rochester, we saw it in Utica, it's coming here too in Syracuse. What we see happening at the Film Hub, and I don't know if people understand.
There's some drip, it seems like, but I'm waiting for something, more substantial maybe, more tangible.
And we are going to participate in that nano pipeway.
I'm not cutting you off, but one, they give me time cues. I could sit here with you for 2 hours, you know that. But one thing that I see that's very positive, having worked downtown for a number of years, I sense a change downtown. And maybe this is a better question for Mayor Stephanie Miner.
Actually, the county has really done a lot downtown in terms of infrastructure and
there's
economic development.
There's foot traffic, there's things going on, and businesses, people are living down there. You can't rent a place or buy a condo, it seems.
And if you go down on the weekend, you'll see people walking their dogs, and the Hotel Syracuse coming back is huge.
That? Yeah.
And my hat's off to the Deputy County Executive, Bill Fisher, who met weekly with the developer and made sure that we stayed on track to finally get the Hotel Syracuse back. There's a lot happening downtown.
We prior to your interview, we sat down a short time ago with Coach Jim Boeheim. And I found him to be somewhat more animated than I expected. And one area that he became a little more vocal on was his love of this community,
and
his love of Central New York. He could have left, as you can.
Yes. No, he could have. I mean, I'm sure he's had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. He is a wonderful person. And as I said to you, I don't know if people realize he, more than anyone, has put Syracuse on the map.
But Joanie, I'm building up to a question.
I got you.
Okay. So, but the problem, as I was listening to all of that, is I find him to be a bit of an outlier in the community, because you mentioned I've got 2 teenage daughters. I don't know that they're going to stay here. And you mentioned, the population growth is basically flat, zero. It's an age-old question, but how do you get the younger people to stay here? How do we?
You make this the kind of community they want to live in. The first thing they need is a job, and that is happening. And then a quality of life. I think our focus with the environmental work that we've done, we stopped building sewage treatment plants and started doing this Save the Rain. That has attracted a lot of young environmental engineers, people who flocked to the Northwest because of the natural environment, now recognize what we have here in Central New York, and then continuing to do things like build an amphitheater so that there is a a cultural life that they're
and I'm not
attracted to.
disagreeing. There's positive things happening. The population growth, if you read the reports, stagnant, zero. Job growth, Post Standard ran a couple of articles, in fact, about how there's jobs, the overall unemployment rate is lower, but in central New York, we're not really seeing any job growth per se.
Well, we
I don't know if it's, and I'm not a supporter of this, I don't know if it's government's job to create jobs, but hopefully government can create a better job environment.
Right, and I do think that the governor has done that. But when you have decades and decades of adding costs and making a very unfriendly business environment, I mean, we in New York thought people would never leave. This was New York. This is where people were going to be. We've seen them go south. We've seen them go west. And now we are gradually bending those curves back down. And, I think this startup New York program, while people love to hate things like that, but when you're competing in New York State with the income tax rate and you look at 0 in Florida and 0 in Texas, you're not going to get there all at once. It's not possible.
Rapid fire here, because we're so tight on time, because I want to get to another subject. You mentioned the county credit rating is strong.
Yeah.
You're financially sound.
Yes.
The bonds you're comfortable with, the debt that's out there.
We have the highest credit rating in New York State.
What is, in your view, what is probably the best functioning, most efficient part of county government right now? What are you most proud of?
That's very interesting. I would say our county operation in terms of, we, on the social services side, we're doing things that people are copying across the country. And then our infrastructure, our roads, our water environment, the WEP, that's what we call our sewer department, Water Environment Protection Department, they are being asked to come all across the country to talk about our Save the Rain program. We are making a more beautiful environment, and that those projects are engineered solutions to stormwater.
And similarly, or conversely, I should say, what needs the most work right now? What are you disappointed in?
Well, I would say I'm not disappointed, but I think all hands on deck with job creation. And it takes, when folks come to town with some, I would say, actually, I'm going to back up and say the businesses that are here should be tended to, so that if there's a decision to expand, look at the Hill-Rom acquisition of Welch Allen. All hands on deck. If there's going to be an expansion or a rejiggering of assets because of that, we should be right in front of people asking, what do you need, and let's grow here.
Let me talk to you quickly about some personal and relationship issues.
Okay.
I remember quite well when you first ran for office. It was not an easy race. You had there was a candidate at the time that was kind of the chosen one from the Republican Party. It seemed, from the outside looking in, it seemed like that caused some friction, some stress between you and the Republican Party. Is that any better today?
It's much better. The committee people have been great to me, and I don't think that generally people that are involved in the political process like primaries, but I think that by and large, the committee people, they passed my petitions, get my name on the ballot this year, 4 years ago. It's much better.
You were unusual, I think in a positive way, it's a compliment. You were unusual, abnormal from a political standpoint, that you formed some relationships, as they say, across the aisle. You were quite close to Mayor Stephanie Miner.
Yes.
Relationship still good?
It is. Our teams meet constantly. The deputy county executive and the deputy mayor have coffee or breakfast once a week. Our teams are really functioning well together. There certainly was a bump in the road when the relationship deteriorated with the state, but my attitude has been that I believe when I'm elected that out of respect to the voters, I have an obligation to work with whomever else they send. And they send Republicans, they send Democrats. They're not sending them hoping that we'll tear each other apart.
Right.
They want us to accomplish things.
Here's a pet peeve. It's something I've spent some time thinking about and tried to get involved with. And you were very, I think, again, correct me, but I think you were very supportive of this notion, and that is the consolidation of agencies and services throughout the county.
Yes, absolutely.
Joanie, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I have to look at my notes. 15 police departments or agencies, 36 highway, 57 fire departments and districts.
I know.
We're not making a lot of progress there, though, are we?
Well, that group consensus that you have probably heard.
Neil Murphy, Jim Walsh.
Yes, and Kathy Richardson. Those are the three co-chairs. Okay. They are coming out with a report, and I have been fully supportive, and I hope that they make a giant step forward in terms of consolidation. There are people who...
It's tougher than it sounds, though, when you start dealing with the personalities involved. Don't you agree?
I think it's going to be tough, but it's good work, and we should do it. And there have been people that I think are killing it with that attitude that the perfect, is the enemy of the good. If we can take a giant step forward, I want to do all of the work necessary to do that. Whether we get all of the fire districts and all the school districts and all the really hot button in the first round, I say let's look at a metropolitan government here in Central New York. I will do whatever it takes.
Does the county have the means financially to maybe put on more paid firemen? It seems the volunteer organizations across the county have such a tough time attracting volunteers.
Oh, I know. The world has changed.
What do you do? Yeah.
The world has changed. Well, you might be surprised to find out that this county is prohibited from being in the fire business by state law.
Okay, did not know that.
Yeah, the city of Syracuse has its fire department, and the towns and then there are the independent fire districts that contract with the villages and the towns. The county is not in the business, but that is a question that we should ask Cesar Perales, the the Secretary of State. We should ask, maybe it's time to look at those kinds of things. And if you do a metropolitan government, the costs are there, and it would be beneficial to us.
I'm getting time cues I don't like, but I did want to mention you were also a big supporter early on, and I think continue to be so on the whole green initiatives, not just Save the Water, but that's still on your agenda.
Absolutely. The sustainability, the world has changed. We have seen some massive storms, and they're going to come to Central New York, and we just have to make sure that we are prepared for that and, reduce our footprint where we can.
As we wrap up here, what can we expect to see from Onondaga County? What can we expect, any positive developments in the next coming years? What are you working on?
I hope to be able to come back here and talk to you about what we've done with the nano school and the jobs that have been created here in Syracuse and in Onondaga County as a result of that, and the suppliers that want to come around these really smart manufacturers that we have. We are working hard in Onondaga County because as you said, I'm a parent, you're a parent. I want this to be a community that my kids choose to live in. Whether they do or not is, an individual decision, and I would support that. But I want this to be an option for the next generation.
You have made some strong bonds with Governor Cuomo and others, and I have to just come back. I know you're going to hate this, but I'm going to do it anyway. You gave an interview to the Post-Standard way back in 2011.
Okay.
And they were somehow or another came up about, how long, where are you going? They're already asking you, what's your next move, right?
Right.
And you made a comment that, you said, well, I've never been in one job for longer than 5 years.
This is the longest I've ever had a job.
This is the longest. You're long in the tooth, and you've got another term potentially coming up. 12 years as county executive.
I hope, yes.
Is there a move after that?
I love this job. I've lived in Central New York. I'm a graduate of Corcoran High School. My husband is as well. All of my brothers and sisters.
I think I'm more local than you, though. You were probably away for a while, weren't you? I never left.
No, I went to Syracuse University, and then I went to Syracuse for law school. I love Central New York. All 8 of my brothers and sisters live in Onondaga County. My parents live in the house I grew up in. I want this to be the kind of community that our kids are really proud to stay in, and this is the job to do it from. I admire those that go off to Congress and go into state government. I think it's harder to affect the locality from those positions. You never know, but right now I'm just thrilled that I get this opportunity to do this.
And just quickly then, looking for the next 4 years coming on your agenda, give me 2 or 3 of the key things. You keep talking about this nanotechnology. That's obviously a hot button issue, right? What else on the agenda?
We are going to continue to modernize government. As you talked about, I think you're going to see a report come from Consensus that makes a bold move.
When is that out, by the way? I think we've all been waiting for this report.
I think in the next couple weeks you will start to hear what it would take maybe to do something big in terms of a consolidation. And I will put all of my energy behind that because, as you said, whether the government can create jobs is, a very different topic. But whether we can create the climate for jobs to grow here, that's my responsibility, and that's what I'm going to be working on.
Okay. We'll leave it there. I want to thank you very much, Onondaga County Executive
you.
Joanie Mahoney. Half an hour seems to fly by with you.
I know, it's a pleasure.
Appreciate your time. Just a reminder, you can visit us online as well. Your questions, comments, some criticism, which we'll pass on to you, of course.
Thank you
if we
very
get
much.
them,
I appreciate
on
that.
foxsyracuse.com. Please send us any responses or inquiries you have. That does it for this edition of Central. From all of us here at Fox 68, I'm Daniel Pluff. Thanks for watching.